Well, welcome everybody to the Land and Water Conservation Fund 2026 webinar for the local grant program. We're going to start with some introductions of the crew. Then we'll walk through a program overview. I'll walk through the application, the specific elements in it, and then we'll end with questions from the audience. You can add questions to the chat as we go. RRS, aka Charlene, will be monitoring the chat and answering as they pop up, but we will review them aloud during the Q&A portion. During Q&A, you can unmute and ask your question directly too, but please make sure your question would benefit everyone. If you have a project-specific question, please reach out to your RRS consultant after the webinar to go through the specific details. So I will start. I am Lily Keaton. I'm the state grant specialist filling in for our program manager, Vonda Martin, and
Sophia Olson, grant specialist with Grants and Outreach for the Division of Parks and Recreation.
And I'm Aiden Manley. I'm the LWCF specific compliance specialist with the division.
And these two are LWCF subject matter experts. And then Charlene, if you want to introduce yourself and your team.
Yeah, hi, I'm Charlene Smith, Director of Recreation Resources Service, and our team does the field administration, so it's your first point of contact as you start working on LWCF, but we work very closely with the DPR team for sure. So I'll let our staff introduce themselves and their region, and I don't see everybody. Terry, I'll start with you.
Terry Stowers, Central South region from Hickory to Fayetteville across the southern part of the state.
All right. And Trey? I think Trey's online.
Hey folks, sorry I'm not on camera, but I am Trey Fouché. I cover the Central North region, which is basically Ashe to Orange County across the northern part of the Piedmont.
All right, great. And Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott Payne. I cover the northeast part of the state, which kind of goes from Wake County to Dare County, along the Virginia border, and then back down from Person County.
Okay, and Brittany, got your
I
sound?
am Brittany Ship. I'm the Southeast Region Consultant. So I kind of pick up there where Scott leads off in the middle part of the coastal state and go into kind of the Wayne County, Greene County area, all the way down to the South Carolina border, covering Sampson, Columbus, and Brunswick.
And is Blake online? I think he's offline. So Blake Covington has the western region, so his office is out of Asheville, and yeah, so I think he was gonna not available this afternoon, but he will be up to date, and he's been working with the LWCF, so glad to help everyone in the West. So I'll turn it back to you, Lillian.
We will let Sophia take over from here.
Let's see. Spotlight here.
So the Land and Water Conservation Fund State Assistance Program supports the protection of public lands and waters, including local, state, and national parks and recreation areas. North Carolina's LWCF funds are shared between the state park program and the local grant program, with 40% available for distribution for eligible local grant projects, which is $4.2 million for this cycle. The local grant funding opportunity officially opened on May 1st, 2026. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be published on the division's webpage and RRS's grant administration page. Contact your RRS regional consultant early in the process of your application. The technical review deadline by RRS is August 28th, 2026. And November 2nd, 2026 is the application deadline. Applications must be complete to be considered for funding, and late submissions will not be accepted. The division will recommend grant recipients to the National Park Service in the spring of 2027. Grant recipients will be announced during the summer of 2027. Good. Proposed projects must align with the priorities within the NC Outdoor Recreation Plan 2025-2030, also known as SCORP. All projects funded by an LWCF grant will be open to the public and be maintained and operated as outdoor recreation in perpetuity. All new parkland acquired with LWCF funds must be open to the public for outdoor recreation within 3 years of project closeout date. If it's a development project, construction must begin within 1 year of award and be completed during the 3-year period of performance, or POP. Requests can be made for time extensions during the period of performance if needed. Our RRS consultants will be doing periodic inspections during the project period to determine if the project is following the scope of work that was approved and if it's still on the project timeline that was submitted. Applicant eligibility. Eligible applicants include North Carolina counties, towns, incorporated municipalities, and federally recognized Native American tribes. Applicants should be in compliance with the stewardship requirements on any existing LWCF sites within their jurisdictions. If an applicant is out of compliance, the division may allow the applicant to apply if it has made substantial progress toward an approved remedy. These applications will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Nonprofit organizations, land trusts, schools, and other private entities are not eligible to apply for LWCF grants. Eligible projects. LWCF grants can be used for acquiring land for a public park, developing a new park site, expanding an existing park site, renovating, replacing outdoor recreation or support facilities at existing parks. You can see our 2026 application guide for all the requirements for eligible projects and funding and project cost information. Acquisition of lands, wetlands, and waters for public outdoor recreation are eligible. This could include acquisition to create a new park, expand an existing park. If you are expanding an existing park, the entire park boundary may be placed under the LWCF restrictions. Acquisition of land may be accomplished through purchase or by donation and must be open for public within 3 years of the project closeout. Waivers of retroactivity will be considered when immediate action is necessary to purchase land, and the time needed to process an application would result in the loss of a significant opportunity for outdoor recreation. Waivers are good for 1 year, and an approved waiver of retroactivity does not guarantee funding. LWCF assistance is available for the development of a wide range of outdoor recreation uses and the facilities needed to support the use and enjoyment of these areas. Park areas and facilities must be open and accessible to the public with no restrictions such as membership. Facilities renovated or replaced with LWCF assistance, as well as the park site where the facilities are located, are to be used for public recreation in perpetuity. Matching requirements. Applicants can now request up to $750,000 with each application. There's no minimum and no priority is given to applicants requesting the maximum amount. The applicant must match dollar for dollar, whatever that request may be. State grants and donated land value can be used as a match for LWCF. In-kind services and federal funds are not eligible to be used. The only exceptions are the RTP Recreational Trails Program and HUD's Community Block Grants. Those can be used as a match for LWCF. So to determine if this grant is a good fit for your project, if you do have a proposed acquisition, you need to have a seller who's willing to allow appraisals on their property and other research to occur during the application and award process. If it's a development project, it needs to be nearly ready for construction, can begin construction within 1 year of being awarded. And the period of performance start date for this cycle will be October 1st, 2027. If you have already started or ready to move quickly with NEPA level environmental review, And you're encouraged to coordinate early with those environmental agencies because response times can take up to 60 days. And these reviews are required with each grant application. If you have sources of non-federal funds to leverage the dollar for dollar match, and if you're responsive and patient, it's kind of a hurry up and wait process, and it requires a lot of patience at times, and there are deadlines and periods of waiting for action, sometimes on the federal level.
I'll talk a little bit about some post-completion compliance and stewardship requirements now. When you're applying for an LWCF grant, it's important for everyone to understand what the compliance requirements are that are attached to this grant funding. Most of them are going to be, well, all of them are going to be contained within the project boundary. So understanding what your project boundary is going to be very important. Some general requirements that must be open and accessible to the public and maintained as DPR attractive and inviting. The boundary must remain intact, so you must have proper site control. It's not going to get encroached upon by whether it be private construction, schools, if it's next to a school, something like that. And any LWCF funded elements must be safely maintained throughout their useful life. I would recommend everyone view the Chapter 8 compliance requirements in the LWCF manual. Planning for compliance in perpetuity is incredibly important. Understanding compliance requirements when planning your project will go a long way to preventing compliance issues down the road. As Sophia mentioned, there is sometimes a lot of period of waiting for action on the federal level when you're working on a project, or if you're renovating your park that previously received LWCF funding. You want to make sure you're prepared for that. You're not waiting around for your project to start. And you want to carefully consider your project boundary. As mentioned before, if you are familiar with what is allowed and isn't allowed on an LWCF funded site, when you're planning the future of your park, knowing whether maybe you're planning an indoor community center, that's an ineligible building for an LWCF site, then you can plan your project boundary that is going to be placed under those protections around that. As with all this, communicate early and often. RRS is an incredible resource, and many compliance issues can be avoided entirely or made a lot simpler to deal with by consulting first with your RRS consultant before any changes are made within that project boundary.
And for application assistance, you can find your RRS consultant by region. Be sure to reach out to them first to discuss the project and for a technical review of your application during the process. Land and Water Conservation Fund State Assistance Program supports the protection of public lands and waters. An updated application checklist can be found in the 2026 LWCF application guide. Once applicants request access to SharePoint, all of the application document templates will also be available in the applicants folder for downloading. The application documents can also be found on the division's LWCF grant website. The project information section of the application, we do require a basic facts and assurances. It must be signed by a chief elected official, certifying that all the information is true and factual and that matching funds will be available if awarded. Applications will be ineligible if this form is not included or if it's included but not signed by a chief elected official. And whoever the contact is that's listed on the basic facts and assurances will be the person who's contacted during the application evaluation and should be available for any questions, clarifications, but all contacts that are listed will be notified of award. Both of these forms are federal forms and must be included for the application to be eligible for consideration. There are portions of the A&R that the division will complete, and the required sections for the grant applicant are noted here. The project timeline, any elements that are listed in the budget for the LWCF project must also be listed in the project timeline. And we do have a template available on the website, and it will be placed in your folder on SharePoint as well. The project narrative is a description and justification. It's important to know that the project description will be published and used for press releases and presentations. And the justification is the why and how, discuss why the project is needed, and outline how the project will impact the applicant's community. You will also be asked how your project aligns with the NC Outdoor Recreation Plan. The plan identifies 4 themes, and each theme has goals and action items. You'll provide the theme, goal, and action item reference and explanation of how it aligns with your project. Applicant self-scoring review. You will evaluate your own application using the same tool that the evaluation team uses. You'll want to make sure to include all relevant page numbers and references. And if it's not included in the application, it won't be evaluated or awarded points. So it's incumbent on the applicant to ensure all relevant information is clearly included. The budget narrative should only list the items for which you are requesting LWCF funding. You'll want to list your source of matching funds, whether they are available or yet to be approved. If a matching fund source falls through, the project sponsor will be required to cover that portion of the match. We require the federal SF 424C form and compliance reports for each prior LWCF grant that is in your jurisdiction.
For those who are not aware, every LWCF protected park requires a self-inspection every 5 years. We are going to require that yours are submitted and up to date when applying for a new LWCF grant. It's required to ensure all the LWCF protected areas remain accessible and reserved for public outdoor recreation. It can also serve as a useful tool to maintain an up-to-date inventory, both on the state's behalf for our National Park Service compliance requirements, but also for, there may be some of you who do not know you have some LWCF funded parks. So it'll be a chance to review any upcoming potential changes or impacts within your LWCF boundary as well to avoid potential compliance issues or actions. And if a self-inspection is not submitted, the state is required to inspect the park on behalf of the National Park Service, and any unreported issues could trigger compliance action. We want to get ahead of this with these 5-year self-inspections, requiring them on a new application, because as mentioned previously, some of these compliance actions can be fairly lengthy, and we want to make sure that we've got everything in order. If things are out of compliance, we want to make sure we are moving both on a state level and a local level, because federal funding can be contingent upon our compliance with the LWCF requirements.
The site information section requires you to submit a site control certification, must be reviewed and signed by an attorney. The maps that we require include the site plan, boundary map, and site vicinity map. We do provide some guidance in the application guide as you're creating your site plan. If it's an acquisition project, you should submit a conceptual plan. Development projects, building floor plans with detailed information is also required, and acquisition documentation. Environmental and NEPA documentation are required for each application. If this information is missing, the application will be considered ineligible. And again, you'll want to start that process early on, as it can be a lengthy process. Planning and public involvement. Again, you want to start early on with that as well, because all LWCF applications should be the result of a planning process that reflects the public's preferences. Some application tips. I think we've said this a few times. Start early. Contact your RRS regional consultant. Consult with the environmental agencies early on. read the 2026 application guide in its entirety, and that is available on the DPR grant website. Keep it simple, reference only your LWCF requests in your application. Start with your budget narrative for 24C and then build the entire application from there, making sure to adhere to those items that are in the budget. Maintain consistency in language, numbers, acreage across all documents. Separate maps as outlined in the checklist with digital versions. And begin with the end in mind. As Aidan mentioned, the post-completion and compliance and stewardship piece of this, making sure that the property can be maintained and operated as outdoor recreation in perpetuity.
And I just want to touch on 2 items that have changed in the evaluation system under our new outdoor recreation plan. Specifically the facilities and activity priority investment ratings and the goals per prosperity zone. As you can see on the slide, this is an overview of the points available for each type of application, and then specifically the facility and activity priority investment ratings. So through the statewide engagement campaign we did for our outdoor recreation plan, there were priority facilities identified as state priorities. We'll award points based on the number and the priority. But on the other side of that, if a local applicant can demonstrate with evidence from their local community engagement that a facility that's not on our state tables but still is a priority locally, points will be awarded for that. So that's where your planning and recreational needs survey and that kind of documentation will be imperative to include to receive points for it. And then in prior iterations, we had a LWCF per capita category. This has taken its place, the goals per prosperity zone. These 4 goals were identified as statewide priorities through recreation provider surveys, public campaigns. So each application will get the points for the goal based on their prosperity zone as defined by the North Carolina Department of Commerce. And so now we'll open it up to y'all for questions. And Charlene, if there's been any in the chat that we need to address.
Yeah, thank you. One was the priority zone with the score. Just confirming what page. They said page 337. Is that correct, or is there a different location to find those?
The page number in SCORP.
Or is it?
No,
if it's in the application, then
it's in the application guide for sure, and it's in the self-scoring tool that's in the application guide. The actual page number within the larger 400-page plan, I'll have to check. I don't know that off the top of my head.
all right.
But it's in the application guide, and that's the same thing that's in the larger plan.
All right, Morgan, that would probably be easier for you to locate. Let's see. Another question which I tried to answer in the chat was the examples of indoor facilities that support outdoor recreation, or what are eligible for development projects. But I also wanted to clarify that, once you have LWCF funding, even for development, that entire park property is then restricted for the LWCF rule. So anytime in the future, you would not be able, even if you do it with your own funding, indoor facilities like, recreation centers, that type of thing, would not be allowed to be built on that property. So that's a key thing to note. If you have future plans for that, there's a way to cut out that boundary. But the types of things we usually think about for supporting outdoor recreation are like a nature center, a boathouse, or if you have like a marina on a lake, office, maintenance structures, campground facilities, a bathhouse, campground office. What else am I missing, guys? Anything?
Well, I want to add, Charlene, it is possible, if it's not already an LWCF park, to draw out an area for a future building to not include in your LWCF park. So that's where planning and working with your RRS consultant really matters.
Yeah, if you think you might possibly put an indoor facility on this site at some point, go ahead and put it on your site, your project maps as a future facility. RRS can help you organize that, but that way it's when you're at, if the grant is awarded and the site is approved as is, there's already an allowance for that public facility.
Yeah, and please, again, just, talk with your RRS consultant, and we're always happy to talk through ideas, come up with ways, just talk through your process and what the needs are in your community, and we can help you on that. Let's see.
Here they are.
So if we haven't said it enough, these are the people that you need to reach out to if you're interested in applying for any of our grants. Absolutely.
Yeah. Robin Payne asked about the NEPA review. National Environmental, would that be, who's on that?
What was the question?
Is there a specific question or just?
Robin, you just want to know about completing that, or?
So it's a National Environmental Policy Act that
Yeah.
the federal government requires everyone has to respond to as being funded. So part of your environmental review process when you're filling out the application goes to the state, and the state looks at it, and they'll determine if there needs to be more detail provided to satisfy that NEPA requirement.
So you don't have to do NEPA before applying. That help, Robin?
I mean, SHPO reviews, Army Corps, Fish and Wildlife, and you get responses from each of those agencies. And then there's National Park Service has a compliance unit that reviews, and typically that's the questions that come up during the application evaluation period, is to clarify the environmental compliance questions.
Yeah, and if you think, I know we've had applications in the past that might be on a waterway where there was, protected species or an endangered species. And they knew, I mean, because of that, putting like a boat access or something, in the water, some type of structure, they knew they would have to get permits, federal permits to do that. If that's not already in the process, yeah, please have that. You might want to wait before you apply for LWCF if you don't have that kind of underway with that permitting.
Yeah, you just have to show that you're in the process of applying for the permits during the application process. And there could potentially be a special award condition with your award that you need to have that permit in hand before you can begin construction on your project.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see, what else do we have? For matching funds, are we able to expend LWCF funds before the matching funds, or do they matching need to be exalted first? And Jacob, it's a reimbursement grant, so you would spend, when you spend money like quarterly, you can turn in like, okay, here's what we spent on the project to date, and you would be reimbursed for half of that. And I'm talking like Cardiff. I'm assuming it's the same, Lillian and Sophia. Up to
Yes, that is correct.
And then you would have 10% would be held out until the project was completed, before that final amount would be reimbursed.
Correct.
Okay. Carrie thinks she heard October 1st, 2027 as a construction start date required for development projects. Is that correct?
That is the period of performance start date. So you need to be able to start construction soon after that date or within a year of that date. That is the period of performance start date.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The project period for these would be October 1st, 2027 through September 30th, 2030. You need to have an executed contract before you start construction, though.
Yeah. Scott, did you have something to add?
No, I was just adding in what Lillian just said. That may be the performance period, but you must have an executed contract before you start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, any expenses prior to that contract being signed would not be eligible for reimbursement. Let's see. Victoria asks, what are some major changes from last year's application process to this year's application process?
Well, the biggest change is that we have a new outdoor recreation plan, so the evaluation of the applications has changed a little bit. In terms of the application itself, we're requiring the self-inspections be completed as part of the application. And again, the consistency with the outdoor recreation plan, it looks a little different. Last year it was just score goals, and this year there's specific goals and action items that the project has to align to. Otherwise, the application process itself is staying the same.
Yeah. Good question, Victoria. We do get some folks that apply, when they've been applying over the years, they don't read the application to see if there's been updates, and they will sometimes miss things.
And you can apply for up to 750,000.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's the other big
Yeah.
difference.
The maximum has increased under the new outdoor recreation plan.
And anything that you want as an eligible expense, you have to have it in your application, in your budget that you submit. Because if you don't
Yes.
include it, it would not be eligible unless we do a lot of paperwork. Yeah. Shweta from Apex wants to know if will you make the presentation available after the call?
Shweta, yes, it is being recorded and it will be available on the division's website and RRS's grant administration website. And I should add too, there will also be an NC Outdoor Recreation Plan and Open Project Selection Process webinar that will be posted in the coming days or weeks in both of those locations as well.
Okay. All the questions, see, unless I've missed anything.
Well, if that's all the questions, we will leave you with a note. Please contact your RRS consultant if you're interested in applying for LWCF this year. They are your best resource in helping you put together an application and working through the process. So reach out to them early if you'd like to get started.
Yeah, and even just like I said, just talking through ideas, like I'm thinking about this or this, which one would be better? And we're great problem solvers out in the field there to help you.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us today, and look forward to seeing some of the projects coming out of your areas.
Thank you.